Good morning, everyone. It's really great to be here today. Today I'd like to talk to you about my research that was supported by the Australian asphalt industry that looks specifically at engagement and safety in your industry. For your information, the criteria to be involved in this research was that you had sticky stuff on your boots. So importantly, this is a frontline study looking at frontline attitudes and behaviours. A prime area of the research is around employee engagement. I think we all understand what that's about. We know what engaged people versus disengaged people look like. There's a significant amount of research in the space. According to the Global Gallup research, only about 3 in 10 people would describe themselves as engaged in work. 2 of those 10 people would describe themselves as actively disengaged. What does it mean to be actively disengaged at work? Work is not fun for these people. Work is like the abattoir of the soul. These people are dragging themselves to not a fun place. And unfortunately, this attitude is catchy. And so engagement's kind of like a good versus a bad attitude. And I think that's something you can relate to. Think about toolbox meetings that you've been a part of. What are the engaged guys doing? They pay attention, they care, they take pride in their work, they make suggestions that are helpful. What do the disengaged do? On their phones, not paying attention. I've heard it all before. So there's 2 guys in your crew, possibly, if you have 10, that are trying to sink your boat and aren't really supporting the goals that you're trying to achieve. I thought just to demonstrate, I'd show you an example of someone who I describe as fairly disengaged.
Right, you've left this section completely blank, Keith. You haven't done the Q&A.
I thought that you filled that in.
No. This is aimed at you. Look, to what extent do you believe that you have the skills and knowledge to perform your job effectively? And then you just tick one of the boxes. Not at all, to some extent, very much so, don't know. What would you tick?
Don't know.
Okay. Question 2. Do you feel you have received adequate training to use your computer effectively?
What are your options?
Same as, they're always the same, always the same. Not at all, to some extent, very much so, don't know.
Don't know.
Don't know again, okay? Do you feel you are given the flexibility to decide how best to accomplish your goals? Do you want the options again?
Yeah.
Not at all. To some extent, always the same. Very much so, don't know. If don't know wasn't there, what would you put?
Well, the options.
Not at all. To some extent, very much so, don't know.
Very much so.
Do you remember what the question was?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we find that funny because we can see the reality of it. And you can see how people are just surviving in their work life. So to be engaged at work is flourishing and thriving in your work environment. People are present and engaged in their work activities. The important part of this story is that it actually has significant financial and safety implications. So if we can improve engagement, we actually get financial returns as well as safety benefits. Smart managers know that if we drive productivity, we actually get more disengagement. Do you understand what I mean by that? When I ask people to do more, they tend to push back and give us less. But if we work in the engagement space, they'll actually give us more. The more engaged they are, the more productive they are. And this is not really an argument anymore. The research is very strong around the financial benefits. In Australia, economists estimate it costs our economy approximately $50 billion a year because of disengaged staff in our organisations. In the United States, that number is somewhere between $350 and $450 billion. So there are significant financial returns. That trickles down to your business, and if your business looks anything like those statistics, you're essentially burning cash. Money is walking out the door. So how do we leverage engagement is the question. As I mentioned, there's also important safety implications. Engaged people tend to make more suggestions. Look in Jim's case. engaged people tend to have less accidents. And when they do have an accident, it tends to cost less money to deal with that particular accident. So there are real benefits in this space. So I showed you Keith. I'd like to show you someone who's on the other end of the continuum. Meet Mike.
It's Monday! Monday morning! Yes! 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 It's Monday! It's Monday! Yes! I can't wait to go to work! I'm going to work! Yes, I'm going to work! My office! I'm at my office! Yes, I'm at work!
Okay, so Mike's a bit of a dick. That's true. Okay, and we don't really want to work with Mike, do we? I mean, we don't want the road workers doing that. That's going to distract the traffic, that's for sure. But the point is, you can see the continuum of engagement, yeah? Does that make sense to you now? There's definitely a continuum. So in your boat, you've got three people rowing, 2 people trying to sink it, and 5 people in the middle who occasionally will pick up the oars. The idea really is to focus on those guys in the middle and try to push them up into the more high engagement area. By the way, engagement is not every day in the zone. You can slip in and out, but being a bit more aware of that can help us to be in that high performing area more regularly. I'd like to talk about the background of the research now and how this research came to be. It initially started in the mining industry, working with dragline operators. That's me out there on the mine sites. I think it was a Blackwater. So this is hands-on, practical research, sitting in the cabs with the guys, talking to them about what's going on in terms of engagement and productivity and what makes a difference. The mining industry actually invested $250,000 in this research project. Based on this, and it took about 2 or 3 years to conduct, by the way, to get to this. This is a model that I developed based on the research outcomes. All it is a framework that explains the levers of being more or less engaged. We don't have the time today to explain the details and the minute elements of the model, but I will explain the 2 general factors that exist which come together to affect whether someone will be higher in the zone, which is the green, that's sort of in the Mike area, or fall down towards the red, that's more the Keith area. Does that make sense? And we move up and down that line. You can probably see yourself in different days where you are. When you're in the green, that's those days where you're just nailing it. Everything's going well. Okay, so if you notice the two different axes, we have personal qualities and cultural fit factors. Personal qualities is how I feel about myself at work. What's my rating of myself? Do I have the qualities that are required to be successful in this business? The cultural fit factors are what do I think about the environment that I'm a part of? And there are things like the management, the communication, type of people they select, whether I'm involved, whether I'm empowered, that sort of thing. The money I get paid, all that comes together. They're the elements of the model. And those people there, you can see, those dots on the graph, they're real people in the mining industry. So we can plot people based on where they are, given their responses. And if you can see, I know it's a bit difficult at the back, but if you can see this guy down here, or this sort of swarm of people down here, okay, which on the bottom right of the screen, they essentially have high personal qualities, but low cultural fit factors. You may know people like this. They're saying, I'm really great, but the organisation sucks. These guys have a high sense of entitlement. This place owes me a job. These guys think if this place would just listen to me, it'd be so much better. Now, unless they're brilliant, like a Shane Warne type, for example, who can sit outside of the culture, you'd have him in your team. But unless you're a Shane Warne type, they're probably not adding a great deal of value to your business, and in fact, having a negative impact on productivity because they're outside of the zone. On the other hand, you can have people who are high in cultural fit, but they're lacking challenge or skills. these guys could be your Cinderellas in the business looking to be discovered. So by understanding that, we can use the framework to start to leverage some of the elements of engagement. I'll come back to this. On to the research I conducted with asphalt. It started with focus groups, with frontline supervisors, asking them about safety, engagement, and productivity. And we sat in a Boral wind stains. Some of them were on the way to shifts, some on the way out of shifts. So again, right in the practical element of the workplace. And we use a force field analysis where I asked them to tell me who plays for the home safe team, who plays for the accident team. And as a consequence, they would write their ideas on a little magnetic strip and put it on the board depending on where they felt it would play. So that's in the guys' writing. So that was about trying to engage them in the process. It's interesting to me that 40% of these guys had no safety training. That's a remarkable statistic. And that's worth the price of admission to go back to your business and just check that all my supervisors have at least had some safety training, because that's a significant amount. And if you look at their experience, they're 15.7 years experience, and we don't even know what type they've had. Okay, so I then asked them about engagement. And so tell me, guys, about engagement. What does it look like for you? They started to describe it, and then I took parts of the model that I showed you before and said, does that sound like situational awareness to you? Yeah, it does. Does that sound like foresight to you? Yes, it does. And essentially, the model was validated by the guys, to the extent that one of them actually took a photo of it as he was leaving the interview, because the language resonated with them. Okay, so now on to the main survey. We had 127 responses, only 112 usable. Some of the guys just went straight down the middle. I had one guy who had responded to 2 questions, didn't do any more, but still wanted to be in the drawer for the tablet. I thought that was, that was pretty good. Okay. So here's what happened. Just have a look at that image for a second. That's the mining data on your left. Excuse me. Pardon me. And the asphalt data on the right. What do you see? It's really similar. So that's cool for me, because it means the model's working. It validates the concepts in the model. The next step, and I hadn't done this in the previous study, was to actually measure engagement. And what's the opposite of engagement? Burnout. Chronically fatigued, they're really disengaged, had enough, not really coping very well, but still on a work site. Not real good, is it? So you can see from the continuum there, the green is the engaged, which you'd expect right in the middle of those 2 factors. When they come together, I'm engaged. Above that is when you're really kicking goals, okay? And down the other end is the burnout factor, when I'm not feeling so good. So remember the model. Here's your guys from the sample. So just take a second to process that. Which guys do you want to work with? It's not very hard to answer that question, is it? And so you can see the red area. I can't say for certain, but I'm fairly confident that those guys are not having a good day on the day that they filled in that survey, for whatever reason. The guys up at the green and above that, they're really having a good day. But you can see the spread that goes right across the organisation. What we can do with this, which makes the model powerful, is we can identify specific elements of leverage for individuals and teams. So we know areas where they're lacking. For example, the gentleman, the screen on the bottom left here, the graph there, we can see this person believes we don't get enough recognition, I'm not empowered enough, management aren't all that good, involvement isn't good enough, but I'm all right. I've got good foresight, practical intelligence, etc., etc. Yeah, see how that works? So we can identify things, and we can also compare crews. So, and some of the variables in the model, 3 really critical factors: foresight, situational awareness, and practical intelligence come out as important factors in engagement area, and they're all trainable and learnable characteristics. And you can see, for example, these 2 teams here. That's foresight of one team versus the foresight of the other team. Do you think foresight is important when it comes to safety? Should we do something about trying to train it a little bit better, knowing what people should be looking out for? The good thing with this terminology is that language we can use to communicate. And just by using the language, you'll actually improve your foresight. You'll improve your situational awareness. So there's potential value there as well. I asked the participants in the survey to indicate whether they have had how many, if any, notable personal injuries in the last 12 months. Of the sample of 112, almost 15% of them suggested they had at least one, and one gentleman had 4. According to Jim's work, or the bird research, that would have been around about 300 near misses, if that's correct, based on that information. Does that statistic feel right with you guys? Well, that's what they told me. So notable is not necessarily reported. Notable is something that I've taken home with me. Take a guess what the red dots are. They're the injuries. Notice where they are and where they're not. So I can't say for sure whether disengaged means I have an injury or whether an injury makes me disengaged, but either way, injury is not putting you in the zone, that's for sure. So there are things we can do, and it's an important issue. I think one of the really critical issues here is there's a lot of talk about the traffic management and barriers, and I think that's really critical, but this is the people and the cultural elements of safety. And we all know you can have all the equipment and the processes, but ultimately it's the culture and the people and understanding that which is important at the end of the day. So this is the focus here. So we collected all the data and processed it using statistical techniques, and from that we identified 3 independent but related concepts, which you already know. But this provides a framework to help to understand it and to influence it. The first factor or area is what we call tacit safety. We call it tacit because it's implicit, it's inside, it's how I feel. The tacit safety is how the guys feel about how safe they are, or how safely they act. It's inside of them. People have high levels of tacit safety, feel safe at work. They feel they can communicate safety problems if they see them. They feel they have the skills to get out of trouble if something does occur. People who are low on tacit safety would tend to think that they can't, or no one hears me around here, for example. Explicit safety is essentially the managers and my perception of the managers and the supervisors, and are they genuine about safety? Do you really walk the safety talk? Because in reality, a lot of guys think you don't. And at the end of the day, it's productivity really before safety. Does that make sense? So it's sending those really explicit messages, and it's primarily about the management and the supervisors, the critical element. The good news is, if we up that, and the work Jim's doing ticks all these boxes. If we up that, people will feel and act more safely. The research supports that. And 100 is a sample to make those generalisations, by the way, fairly strongly. Oops, sorry, one more. Safety comms. How do you deliver your message? Do you send the guys an email, say, be safe today? Or do you put it in a simple language that they understand? Do the supervisors know how to run a toolbox? Let's promote someone. They're really good in that technical space. They're a great crew member. Really good guy, reliable. I'm going to promote you now and put you in charge of a team of 10 guys or 7 guys or whatever it may be. Do they have the skills to run a toolbox? Have you trained them in that space? Is that important? How important is a toolbox as a safety comm? And the way that we do that, and the style of the message. But what training do we do around that space? What I'm saying to you here, think about the way the message is sent, the style of the message, how consumable is the message for the end user? Why does Coca-Cola change their advertising regularly? Because we stopped noticing it. So are we sending the same message over and over? So this is a conversation to have. Okay, so moving along. We can see between here, I've just plotted a couple of gentlemen from the sample on the tacit safety. These 4 factors, which I don't have the time to explain in detail today, explain 76.2% of whether you feel safe or not. I can leverage those to explain 3/4 almost, or more than 3/4 actually, of how safe you feel. And the main driver, and you know this, the main driver is performance management from the supervisor. The feedback I'm receiving on a day-to-day basis. 50% of the story is the supervisor. One of my main messages from today is do not underestimate the value of supervisor training in this space. It is critical. Don't just promote them and expect them to be good at this. It's a skill set they need, and they're not. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. So you can see the guy on your left doesn't feel safe, and he won't act safe because he's nervous. The guy on the right does. Who do you want to work with? Do you want to try to leverage those factors? The crew plays a very important role here as well. How important is your crew to how safe you feel? And again, a really undervalued area in this space. We don't pay enough attention to crew selection, to crew development, to crew synergy. All those things can be done and developed. And by doing these things, what are you leveraging? Engagement. What are your benefits? Productivity, as well as safety. Excuse me. Here's explicit safety, and again, a number of factors predict around 70%. What was explicit safety again? How genuine are you? The guy on the right thinks you're full of shit. Does that make sense? I've heard all this before. Here we go, this same old bullshit. You know what I mean? So they don't believe you. If they don't believe you, they don't feel and act safe, and they're disengaged. Should we do something about it? Don't worry about it. Keep going. Okay, last one. The vehicle for the message. The guy on the left is sitting in the toolbox meetings with his mobile phone going, I've heard all this before. Don't need to listen to this. The guy on the right is paying attention. Who do you want to work with? Okay, the last thing we asked in the study, and we're getting to the final points, is can we actually predict who's in the injury bin or the non-injury bin? And it turns out with 66% chance we can. How this works, if you can imagine a spreadsheet, and we've got 100 people responding, and they've a number of different variables that they responded to. At the end of that is the question, did you have an accident or not? Yes or no? What we can do is put those 4 factors into a model that are on the board, on the screen there, and the computer will, what the computer does, it processes 99 of them and leaves one out, okay, and works out the calculations. Then it says, on that one case, I would guess or estimate that's an accident. And then do it again. I would guess that's a non-accident. 66% of the time, it got it right. That's important. So we can leverage those things, or if we understand, if I'm a manager, I understand those things, and I realise where people are in that area, maybe that's the day to stay in the shed today, for example. I mentioned situational awareness a few times, and I just wanted to touch on this because I think this is a real opportunity. Situational awareness is how much do you pay attention? Are you aware of your environment? The best managers definitely have high levels of situational awareness. They know what's going on. They get their guys, they can see what's happening with the crew, they can see that something's parked in the wrong place. You know, they're really switched on to what's happening. Does that make sense to you guys? So higher situational awareness is a skill. Think about the traffic controller. High situational awareness important for them, you know, paying attention to what's actually going on. If I can just give you an example from the focus group research. One manager was telling me about a situation where one of his guys was going through significant personal issues at home. And this is also another undervalued issue, I think. There's a lot of people bringing stuff to work, and how do we cope with that? And it's tough, you know, when you're doing night shift and you've got personal problems. So the better managers are onto this. They know that the guys are having problems. That's situational awareness of their crew. They know what to look out for. So they know Bob's having some problems. They know Bob's mind's away. So what do? They keep Bob busy. That's actually really powerful leadership and really powerful management. Let me play this for you. If you don't think you can be trained, talk to someone in the military.
Advanced situational awareness training teaches soldiers how to read people and environments. In this installment of our series, Melissa Anderson breaks down the 6 domains of ASAT and shows us some fundamentals taught to achieve overmatch and to keep our soldiers battle ready.
Yesterday there was a bomb on that attack on that road down there.
The Army is using advanced situational awareness training to teach soldiers how to use their minds to make more effective decisions on the battlefield. A large part of ASAT is profiling human behavior, which is broken down into 6 domains. These are heuristics, proxemics, atmospherics, biometrics, geographics, and kinesics.
You train your guys in that stuff, they'll be safer and they'll be more engaged. My research shows it fairly strongly. And you know what? You're also giving them a life skill. This stuff actually transfers into more competent life skills. So it's a very valuable tool. The military train it, customs train it, police train it. It's very, very trainable and learnable and changeable. Some people are more naturally endowed with it, but we can certainly help people become better at it. Last couple of conclusions as I finish. The research suggests it's most effective to provide direct and appropriate and immediate feedback on safety behaviours than any other strategy. This drives the safety culture and explicit safety as well. So that is the key. So what does that mean? Investing in frontline supervisor development is absolutely paramount. What are you guys doing in this space? Could we be doing something better? I work with these guys. I've been in this industry for about 10 years doing frontline leadership training, supervisor training. There's a real lack of a skill set here, and there's a real opportunity that will be both financially beneficial for the individuals involved, and also beneficial for safety. But it will take an investment. Management commitment to safety needs to be highly visible, I should say. Actions, not words. Walk the talk, simply. The guys will see through it. More attention, please. Pay more attention, please, to the composition of your crews. Who's going where? Do they get on together? We know those two guys are going to kill each other. Let's just put them together and see what happens. That'll be fun. Okay, some sort of social experiment. Okay, think about this stuff. You know, there's a guy who's struggling, but you got a guy who's sort of a bit more down the zone, or someone who's really in the zone. Maybe they could mentor each other, or he can mentor him. But we're thinking strategically about composition. The good thing about this part of the engagement equation, and the safety equation for that matter, it's where you'll get bang for your buck really quickly, because you can just do it, move it, change it, you know what I mean? It's actually where, in the short term, you'll see quick returns by focusing on the composition and development of my crews. Situational awareness training is a screaming opportunity. It really is. We can break it down, we can look at how they do it, we can teach our leaders to do it. To me, it really suggests an opportunity to leverage. Improve the message channels. Don't just use the same old stuff, another email, another toolbox meeting. You know, the supervisor gets up there, same old tone, blah, blah, blah. You know, no one's paying attention. So think about it, train it. You know, simple messages. Jim's example is a great example of communicating the safety message in a simple way that the guys get, understand, and then the vehicle's there to support that. And remember, many of these strategies will also improve employee engagement. So you get a lot of value in the space if you're prepared to invest. My last point for today is I'd like you to think about how you spend your occupational health and safety dollar. We spend a lot of money on safety. In fact, you spend 96 cents in every dollar on safety and approximately 4 cents in every dollar on mental health, employee health, and well-being. My point is, the engagement stuff, sure, safety is important. If you want people to be disengaged, make your workplace unsafe. But the engagement stuff is really in the mental health area and the well-being area. We're not saying people have mental disturbances over here. We're just saying we're helping them to improve their overall well-being. And so there's opportunity to perhaps increase that 4 cents to 10 cents. And you'll get more engaged, productive, and safe employees. Thank you very much.